HyperEVM has received some very bullish news in the recent past, and today we're taking a deep dive into what are the best projects and airdrop targets in this vibrant ecosystem. Let's get started. First of all, super bullish news is that a Nasdaq-listed company, Inovia, has raised $50 million to launch HYPE token treasury strategy, becoming the first US public company to hold HYPE token in their treasury. Probably the recent price action had something to do with this, but this is definitely a very, very good virtuous cycle. Also, the inflows and outflows from the ecosystem are very positive in the last week, and we can see that as Jumper has made the net inflows chart over here. And of course, Jumper is one of the easiest way to get in and out of most ecosystems while farming their own airdrop. And here we can see that net inflows into HyperEVM are actually very positive compared to the rest of the market. For example, Base and Solana have had huge outflows, and the only ones with positive inflows other than HyperEVM are Arbitrum, Ethereum, and Optimism. And if we take a quick look at what are the top projects on DeFi Llama compared to TVL, we can see that, of course, Hyperliquid is never going to be dethroned from number one, most likely. Hyperland, Felix, of course, projects we mentioned many times in the past still hold top 3 spots, and then we can diversify into some DEXs and maybe some slightly more risky, but again, very potentially lucrative airdrop opportunities and also yield opportunities. And regarding the crypto general price action over the last couple of days and a week, it has been very turbulent because of the political situation and volatility. However, we can see that even though Bitcoin is just hovering over 100K, even though Hyperliquid token did just break their all-time high a couple days ago, now it is logically following the main culprit on the market, being Bitcoin. Also, one very, very bullish news regarding a blast from the past from perpetuals, that is Zeta. Zek's token price has been surging dramatically over the last couple of days, probably because of their announcements regarding Bullet. However, this is something more speculative, but if you have some positions from the past that you still want to cash in, maybe consider selling a little bit during these crazy pumps. Needless to say, none of the information is ever financial advice in any of the videos. However, if you wish to learn these things yourself and do your own research, then of course combining power and your abilities with other people who are very skilled in this field, like in our Discord, is definitely an amazing place to start or continue your journey. If you want to talk with DeFi degens, airdrop hunters, and experienced DeFi individuals, then you can do so on our Discord, and all information is always in the subscriptions page, which is always in the first link of every description of every video. You can also see an airdrop tracking application here, which will help you keep organized on your journey. And there is a 10% yield NFT, which can generate you very sizable returns, especially if you compound them. And it has been recovering slowly but surely over the last couple of weeks and months, courtesy of our DeFi legend, Chris. And if you have any questions regarding this collection, you can always ask in our Discord or in the free Telegram group, which we have also created specifically for this NFT collection. Link always in the description. Back to HyperEVM. Now you've bridged your assets to the network, and what can you do with them? Well, first of all, you're going to want to know where to swap tokens, and KittenSwap actually just finished their points program, and you can see the rank in the leaderboard as of June 18th, but there's another one that you can still use to generate points, and you can even deposit some liquidity on their competitor HyperSwap. Now let's take a look at some of the projects we've mentioned in the past, which you could still use as good DeFi plays and some places to park your liquidity on HyperEVM. Starting with Unit, they're actually one of the more speculative ones out there, because last time we covered them, they only had Bitcoin as a deposit possibility. And while you can still use Bitcoin, they recently added Ethereum, Solana, and even Fartcoin. And it is definitely on the more speculative side of things, because they don't actually have anything in their documentation that would signify an airdrop. So if you want to take a bit of a gamble, but a very unique and specific way to approach HyperEVM, then you can take a chance with this one. Next, we have Liinal, which is another project with very unique mechanics, but seems to be having a bit of an overhyped launch, and they have actually accumulated over 20 million in total value locked, and unfortunately, the deposit caps are also full at the moment, whilst needing a referral code. So to jump a lot of hoops, but if you want to take part in this one, which might have an air of exclusivity with it, which does also probably have some airdrop potential, then we will drop a couple of these invite codes from our Discord directly in the description of this video.
Hey guys, we partner with What Exchange, one of the greatest decentralized exchange right now in the market. I love that you can see everything on your screen at once. You can connect to what exchange from different mainnets, and you can see here the list of hundreds of tokens. They are continuously adding more tokens each week. And what exchange has an active airdrop? They are going to distribute it 30% of the total supply, guys, into this airdrop. So that is why I am super bullish trading here too. You can see here the point section that they added recently, so you can check everything about your progress on this airdrop. And in trading, you can see how many order tokens you earn because they have this payback system from the fees that you pay. Part of that goes back to you on order tokens. So check the link on the description to join to what exchange, trade on the platform, participate on the airdrop of the 30% of the supply, and also get some order tokens back. All the links are in the description.
Another liquidity airdrop on Hyperliquid is Hyperdrive, and this one is offering decent yield, but more importantly, they are only going to launch a points program, which means that for this one you could be very early, considering that the total value locked amongst all of these pools is just under 20 million. Of course, if you wish to get better yield, you should not look at this particular one, but you can use looping strategies, meaning that you deposit a stable asset and borrow a stable asset, in this case stablecoins, or you can do so also with the Hype LST, but then you have to be very careful that you are also borrowing a correlated asset to Hype's price action. So it can either be Hype token itself or Hype LST. And speaking of looping, we have a very interesting concept from Looped Hype. It is basically an LST from Hype token that you can actually do 3x leverage looping. And while this carries a certain amount of risk, it can also help you secure the juicy yield. And currently they're in the phase 3, which is going to last until they reach 100 million in total value locked. And it is definitely an interesting way to get extra exposure to Hype tokens. Two important mentions is they already have their Loop token launched in late May, which you can use to further boost your yield. And the Looped ETH strategy is also coming very soon. You can sign up to get early access. In last update might be the riskiest. Keiko Finance is one of the more unknown projects on the list. However, they do have about 6 million in total value locked with very unique mechanism as well with their points program. So if you're planning to maybe take a little more riskier approach, this could be one to keep on your radar. And Boris from the future covering all our bases just to be sure. We are also going to mention a couple of the main projects with TVL on Hyperliquid EVM because, of course, while we do prefer maybe slightly more risky risk-on plays with higher upsides, of course, there are people with a lot more capital who just need to diversify their risk, and we also need to cover everything in the top projects Hyperliquid. Therefore, we're also going to mention really quickly what's new with the projects we covered before, such as Felix, Upshift, and others, but also the top category leaders in lending and leveraged yield farming. Let's get started. As Santiago mentioned before, we have Upshift. This is one of the more underrated projects on HyperEVM, and for a good reason. You still have a lot of time before they reach 750 million in total deposits. We are only around halfway there at the moment, and you're still getting 5x bonus points, but you're also generating a lot of these other projects multipliers by simply depositing into these HyperEVM pools for Hype and UBTC. Of course, the APYs are nothing special, and this is a very specific strategy which carries certain smart contracts risk as well, but you always try to diversify your smart contract risks by simply depositing into multiple different projects. As for Felix, we've been covering this since testnet, and in mainnet they just keep delivering. Their latest integration with USD HL, their version of stablecoin, which doesn't only have US treasuries as collateral, but also ability to be further used in DeFi in multiple ways. This is quite good innovation, and of course it has been used on many different platforms in tens of millions of volume and liquidity. Of course, main projects such as HyperSwap and KittenSwap are already utilizing it to a huge degree, and this is not something to ignore. And as for last two plays regarding liquidity, there is no safer bet at the moment looking at TVL and fees other than Hyperland. We've already mentioned them in the past. It is as straightforward as it gets. Deposit, earn yield, no looping strategies, unfortunately. However, if you are a little more risky, if you are a little bit more legend, then you definitely have the option of HyperFi, which actually enables you to leverage yield farm by simply loop and leverage your hype tokens. You mint their native USDXL stablecoin, get more hype, and simply use this strategy. However, keep in mind that you are increasing your risk of liquidations. If hype ever drops in value below your liquidation threshold, then you stand a risk of just being stuck with their USDXL, which might even be pegged because it is only trying to keep peg with the US dollar. So always be aware of the risks, because the tokenized US treasuries are not always going to be matching the value of USDXL. Of course, it's going to be small oscillations, but it is a risk other than smart contract risks that you have to be aware of. Of course, there's the other side of the coin. If you think that USDXL might, for whatever reason, be pegged, then your borrow is actually going to be worth a lot less. So you could potentially repay it at a lower amount, but this is very risky business. You don't really want to be in a project whose main stablecoin starts depegging. And that said, let's wrap up with some very straightforward look at the fees. Hyperliquid as a project on HyperEVM is still the main, by far, the main fee generator, generating 1.5 million in the last 24 hours, while all the other projects combined haven't even combined to maybe 5 or 10% of what Hyperliquid got. So, of course, there is no way to dethrone the king just yet. And on top of it all, they've also enabled the oldest asset in the galaxy, gold, to be traded on Hyperliquid as well. So they also keep innovating, and don't forget, there is still 39% reserved for future Hyperliquid airdrops. So all the stuff we do on HyperEVM is probably very beneficial for the eventual 39% we're still expecting. And that is a wrap for this short HyperEVM update video. If you believe that it's going to have a Solana moment just like we had in 2023, then you might want to position before it becomes obvious. If you like this kind of content, make sure to like and subscribe with bell notifications on. Any questions, comments, I'm waiting for you in the comment section and in our Discord. And as always, thanks for watching and have an amazing day.